In the heart of Mexico, a rare creature once found its home in the depths of Lake Chaco, near present-day Mexico City. Unfortunately, that lake no longer exists. With its home drained to make room for the expanding metropolis, this unique amphibian has been forced into canals and streams infested by invasive predators like the Asian carp and African tilapia. This salamander's only hope of survival is to become remarkably resilient. But that's just what you expect on Life, Death, and Taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy, your 30 minutes of interesting animal info. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos, and this is Season 2.
That's right, and we're kicking it off with...
a crazy-looking animal.
It's adorable, I think.
Sometimes.
I saw some video of it. It's pretty adorable.
Sometimes it looks like something that could kill you in the core of Naboo. If it were,
I guess,
1 million times bigger.
Yeah. So, do you want to do the taxonomical breakdown?
Sure thing. Well, as you've seen from the title of this episode, we're dealing with the Axolotl salamander.
Uh-huh.
Very strange word. Axolotl. Mm-hmm. So you'd imagine a Y to be between the T and the L, but nope. Just T and then L, and then the end of the word.
Did you find out what that means?
Nah.
It means water monster.
Really?
Yeah.
In, like, Greek?
No, in, I want to say Aztec. Who was in Mexico City?
Aztec.
That's who it was.
Well, the Mayans were in the Yucatan. It's probably Aztec.
Pretty sure it's Aztec.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Z's.
Yeah, they do have a lot of Z's.
And X's.
Or I'm gonna have to say an X later on. And every time I say axolotl. So, we've got Kingdom Animalia. We've got Phylum Chordata, because this thing has a spine.
Like spines.
We've got Class Amphibia, as most salamanders are.
Yeah.
The order is... Yeah. The order is Urodela.
I am?
Yeah, Urodela.
Oh.
I'm a Della. You're a Della. He's a Della. We're all Dellas.
Adele the Hun.
So, we're on to the family, which is Abystomatidae.
Interesting.
Yep. Another one of those that ends with an AE. And I just say A.
Where's Castello Somatidae? Such a good joke.
No, it's not. That's mediocre at best. Abystomatidae and Castello Somatidae.
Yeah.
This is like Stomatopoda.
Yeah, what's the monopoda with you? Call back. Roll threes. They got one more.
Genus is Abystoma, and species is Mexicanum. I'm going to start trying to say species, because species is not a word.
It is if you're Sean Connery.
Definitely heard it both ways, but it's supposed to be species.
Species.
So we have our binomial nomenclature as Abystoma Mexicanum.
Okay, I like that. It's a good one.
And this episode, I will be general info.
That's right.
And you can be major facts.
Reporting for duty. And what we mean by that, for season 2, I suppose, is
I just love this idea that I introduced you now.
Yeah. That Carlos is going to be delivering for this episode at least, delivering the general info, and I'm going to be delivering the nitty-gritty major facts.
Right, so next time I might be major facts and you might be
right, we'll
info.
switch the roles. Keep it fresh.
All right,
spicy.
So other names for the axolotl is the Mexican salamander, boring, or the Mexican walking fish, which is more interesting and also wrong. Because it's not a fish. It's a salamander.
Yeah.
Its physical characteristics are pretty strange. You've probably seen like that crazy cave salamander that evolved eyes away. It kind of it's like this pink lizard thing that's like underwater and
the Texas cave salamander.
Yeah, looks like a Pokemon.
Evolved those eyes away. I don't need them.
It's like I only eat one thing a year. I need to use my energy and proteins for things other than eyes. Well, I'll start by saying that they are neotenic.
Sure.
or neotenic, however you want to say it.
What could that mean?
It means that they retain juvenile traits into adulthood. So they're amphibians, which means that they start as eggs. They hatch in the water.
Mm-hmm.
They are these like tadpole form things. They swim around, live entirely in water, and have gills. And most amphibians eventually grow legs, lose their gills. Frogs and toads lose their tail, but salamanders keep it. And then they go onto land and they proceed to live the rest of their adult life on land. Axolotls do not.
They get some legs.
They get some legs, but they
keep those gills.
They pretty much keep everything else.
Yeah.
They become bigger tadpoles with legs. You know that you ever keep tadpoles as a kid?
No.
I used to like catch them and keep them in a. I didn't have any food for them, so they died. But they would, some of them would like metamorphose.
It's awful.
I was dumb and 6, but some of them would metamorphose in the little pan that I had, and so they would grow legs, but they would still have this really long tail. And that when I see the Wikipedia image for an axolotl, that's what I think of.
But do they eat each other? Sometimes they do that.
No, they just die. The water evaporates and they become like this big pile of dead tadpoles.
So you're just like, I'm going to collect these and like, I'm done. I'm done now.
I should have, when I realized that they would die, should have just thrown them back. But I wasn't a humanitarian back then. Okay, so right now you're picturing this, it's about, the biggest ones get to be about a foot long, but that's pretty rare.
Generally, they're pinkish, whitish.
Actually, no. Generally, in the wild.
Yeah, you're right.
They are brown.
Yeah.
Brownish gray.
To look at, they are not special.
Yeah. You would think that, this is a fish with legs. That's pretty special. But they have these frilly gills. They have 6 of them, 3 on each side, that stick out behind their head, and they kind of move oxygenated water into their gills.
Okay.
And it moves through the oxygenated water and collects oxygen through what I assume to be like osmosis, like a semi-permeable membrane that takes oxygen molecules in, or atoms in, and leaves everything else out. But don't quote me on that. But it's pretty crazy to look at. They have kind of these fan coral-esque things on the sides of their heads. And it's also having gills on the outside of their body rather than fish that have them on the inside.
Not the only ones to do that. Other salamanders do that. Have those gills outside.
The other neotenic salamanders.
Well, and like in infant stages.
Yeah, but then they usually lose them into adulthood. And these, like the tiger salamander, keep them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like I was saying earlier, the Texas cave salamander also keeps these gills and lives underwater. And back on the neotenic thing, can also be called paedomorphism, which means you reach sexual maturity without going through metamorphosis.
Okay, I thought that's what the same thing is.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Okay.
It's just a different way of saying it. So, yeah, these things are permanently water-dwelling. They do not go on land, although they can gulp air.
I saw them doing that. That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's called buccal pumping.
What is that for?
It's another way of getting air into the lungs.
Oh. So they have lungs.
Well,
tadpoles don't have lungs. They grow lungs.
But the things that have gills have lungs, but the gills facilitate the lungs.
It's not lungs. It's not called lungs. But I see what you're saying. An organ that processes oxygen and oxygenates blood.
I read the word lungs. It's all I've got. So yeah, buccal pumping.
Cool.
There's have you ever what a snakehead is?
Yeah, it's the part at the end of a snake that's not the tail.
Sure. It's also an invasive species of carnivorous fish here in South Florida that is eating everything, and it also does buccal pumping. Despite the fact that it does have gills, it comes up and sucks air from the surface, which scares the living daylights out of you if you're just sitting by a lake and suddenly you hear, and you're like, what the heck was that? Is there like a monster in there? Also, these things can be like 4 feet long. So
what I was imagining before you made that sound was like you're just sitting there peacefully fishing, and then all of a sudden you just hear You look over. It's a fish.
with like a human face.
That sounds like it's from Dark Souls.
Yeah. It sounds like it's like a Miyazaki thing. Anyway, so for the most part, axolotls are brown, but there aren't a lot of them in the wild. So most of our observation of them has been in captivity.
Where they're much better looking, I think.
They've developed some mutant colorations. The first one is leucistic, which is pale pink with black eyes, which is what you're thinking of, like a lot like the Texas cave salamander.
Chainsaw salamander.
They look albino.
Yeah.
Even though that's not the albino one. The albino one is gold with gold eyes.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
I must see a photo.
Look it up. So it's leucistic, which is pale pink with black eyes. And then you have albino, which is gold with gold eyes. The next one is axanthic, which is gray with black eyes, which I think is a little bit more like the wild version. And then you have melanoid, which is all black. Black.
I've seen the black one. I thought the black ones were in the wild, too.
Maybe. But the mutant colorations are supposed to be the ones that developed in captivity.
There's one other thing about their, morphology that I think is notable. Is they've got this big old cheesy grin. And it's great. Hashtag critter smiles.
They're very photogenic.
Yeah.
Like that one gecko with the lovely eyes. You ever see the photogenic gecko?
No.
You got to look that up after this.
Okay, everyone. There's going to be a lot of people that have some Googling to do after this podcast.
If you're in the car, don't Google this.
Yeah. It's not
until
worth
you reach your destination.
Hashtag
don't text and drive.
Don't
Google and drive. So yeah, they get up to a foot long. They have a big, wide face.
Yep.
Big, wide grin.
To facilitate that smile.
They have teeth for that smile. Small ones. And they're vestigial because they don't really chew anything. They kind of just inhale things into their mouth with vacuum force.
Into their stomach.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Directly into their open stomach.
Yeah. With
vacuum force.
Yeah.
Which I put in all caps because that sounds very cool.
Yeah, definitely don't want to do that with like a sharp potato chip. Definitely want to chew that.
A kidney stone.
I would never inhale. I wouldn't do anything with a kidney stone.
That involved putting it in your stomach?
Getting it out, well, that's one thing. It's not fun, but it's one thing.
Oh, man.
I'm not putting it in. That's for dang sure.
I might pay all the money I have in my bank account right now to ensure that I never have a kidney stone in my whole life.
I'll do a kidney stone for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, no.
I mean, it hurts, but I don't think it kills you, so.
It doesn't kill you, but it also doesn't make you stronger.
All right. Fair point.
All right. Oh, the teeth would have grown in had they reached full metamorphosis maturity.
Yeah.
But since they don't, their teeth never grow in. Like we said, they feed through suction. They just basically inhale their prey into their stomachs.
Page 2.
They eat worms, insects, small fish. They locate their food via smell.
Same.
Like I wonder where my food is. I'm not gonna check the refrigerator or the pantry. I'm just gonna smell around until something pops up.
Inhale that right in my stomach.
So here's another aspect of their biology. They are poikilotherms, which basically means cold-blooded. Not necessarily, but it just means their temperature varies.
Okay.
So you and I, our temperature stays the same unless we're sick or dying. But for these animals, they function in a wide range of temperatures. So I saw a graph. The poikilotherms can function they don't have a very high energy output ever, but they can function over a wide range of temperatures, where warm-blooded animals can have a very high energy output, but they can only function over a very small range. So it's like you've got between 95 degrees and 105 degrees for a warm-blooded animal or something like that, where a poikilotherm can be like, I don't know, a much bigger range than that. So in cold temperatures, their metabolism slows considerably so that they can survive winters and stuff like that. And the only animal that's not cold-blooded that they think is a poikilotherm is the naked mole rat, the only mammal.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
That it can function,
Interesting.
not just survive, but
That's interesting for a fact later. Remind me about that later.
the naked mole rat.
Yeah.
All right. You have to do the
I'll
Kim
try.
Possible ringtone for me.
Dun, dun, dun.
What's the sitch? So, axolotls live in 2 lakes in the world.
Uh-huh.
One of them is Lake Xochimilco.
Okay. Z's. There's those Z's you were
That's
talking about.
Xochimilco. And the second one is Lake Chaco. Lake Chaco was artificially drained to stop flooding, so it no longer exists.
Uh-huh.
So now we've got is
I've heard they found them in a few canals.
Yeah, well, pretty much because Lake Xochimilco is now just pretty much canals.
Uh-huh.
So that's where they live now, in the wild. They're very endangered.
Yeah.
And all of this is very close to central Mexico City. So destruction of their habitat and the introduction of invasive species like the African tilapia, which eats their young and their eggs, and also is a competitive food eater.
Yeah.
What is
competitive predator? Competitor?
Competitor. That's what we're calling them. That's contributed to the fact that they're not thriving in the wild, and they're mostly observed in captivity.
Uh-huh.
And that is all I've got for the general info.
All right.
And I also have a little bit about some stuff about cancer, but let me know when you want to talk about that.
Major facts. Reporting for duty. All right. So there's some hope that in captivity they're not going away because there's a lot of reasons to study these guys. And a lot of reasons, by a lot of reasons, I mean they're all under the umbrella of incredible regeneration.
Ooh. Wolverine style.
Wolverine style indeed.
Ooh.
You might even say.
That sounds like a reason to have this episode.
It does. So I heard a thing that said they were the only terrestrial animal that can regenerate limbs, which I think there are other salamanders in the same
I have a problem with
genus.
I have a problem with the classification of terrestrial.
True, they can walk on land, but they're not hugely into it.
Like mud puppies.
Yeah. So they are one of the few land-ish creatures that grow
You're landish.
limbs.
Landish Calrissian.
All right.
Calrissian.
So their arms can regenerate from any point. Limbs can regenerate from at any point. Like cut them off at the wrist, you can grow a hand. Cut them off like above the elbow, your entire arm goes. Or if you're an axolotl.
Okay, right.
Whereas like if a lizard, if they lose a tail at a certain point,
They can't grow it back.
it has this detach point. So
Right.
if something grabs it, it detaches.
Mm-hmm.
But it grows back from that point. So they can regenerate the front portion of their brain called the telecephalon.
There we go.
Yeah, so a chunk of their brain, it's not super vital, but it's a chunk of their brain that they can regrow.
By wishing hard enough?
By wishing hard enough. Because it's not the wish part of their brain.
If they lost the wish part of their brain, then,
Yeah.
then
They'd be
nothing
like,
happens.
What's the story? Wishbone.
Speaking of bones, do they have bones or cartilage?
They have bones.
And they regenerate those too.
Oh, sure they do.
Oh wow.
And speaking of bones, they can
I was speaking of bones.
regrow crushed or severed spinal cords in 3 weeks. You
Jeez.
cut that spinal cord, it reattaches.
I don't want to know
3
how they
weeks.
figured that out.
There's some weird stuff they're doing to those guys.
Yeah.
They can regrow their testes.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. Pretty not very common.
No, neither is regrowing your spine.
Fair point. Excellent point. Because normally things that regenerate like this don't have spines at all, like starfish.
True.
So they can regrow like ventricles of the heart, portions of the heart. That takes about 30 days.
So it takes them longer to regenerate ventricles than it does to regenerate a spinal column, which you said was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
21 days for a spinal column.
Yeah.
That's the shipping period.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You want a spinal column? This is going to take 21 days.
It's going to come in one of those coolers. You put it right in.
If you need a ventricle, that's going to take me a full month.
We're backed up on ventricles, man.
We're backed up.
The regenerative cells said to the axolotl. So they can also accept transplanted eyes.
They're not axolotl.
Stop it.
They're axolotl.
Don't trample over that incredible fact with that
I
terrible
don't know to think
pun.
of this before we even sat down. Axolotl versus axolotl.
All right.
He's an axolotl guy. He's got axolotl love. Oh, goodness.
You want to know how to regenerate? Ask this little guy.
No,
All right, here we go.
done.
Here we go. They can accept transplanted eyes. Did you hear me say that? Do you realize how complicated eyeballs are? Just pop one of those boys in, and it's good to go.
So they take an eyeball from one axolotl,
Yep.
and then they put it into another one.
Yep.
And then it just says, this is mine now.
Yeah, plug and play. Yeah. And it is fully functional.
Wow.
And other limbs. So if you cut off one axolotl's arm and another one, you can swap their limbs if you want to. Sid Phillips style.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about now. Toy Story.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, who the heck is Sid Phillips? So you could take... Is this transcoloration? Could you take the... let me see if I can... Can you take the leg of a leucistic axolotl and attach it to the stub of an axanthic axolotl and conceivably have this like weird... Yeah.
Colorful thing.
Sid style.
It's like when a car
animal.
has a door from a different car and it's a different color.
Yeah.
As far as I know, yes, as long as it hasn't gone through metamorphosis.
But it doesn't. That's the point of it being neotenic.
Some of them do. They can be induced as well.
Okay.
What
What happens when it's induced?
They still live underwater. They're still mostly underwater. I've heard that they don't like it. They don't thrive in that situation, but they look like your typical salamander.
They don't have the gills?
No.
Interesting.
But it's rare, and most of the time it's just done in a lab.
How the heck do you even induce that?
You give it a pep talk.
Do you just like...
It's time to grow up, so you say.
Grow up?
Stop being such an axolotl. Be an axolotl.
Actual little boy. Oh, we gotta stop it. It's done. Rule
Okay.
3s.
All right, so they're super duper resistant to cancer. So for that reason, they're vital to cancer research. I've heard, I read something that they're 10,000 times more cancer resistant than any other animal.
So they don't even get it, or they can just fight it off immediately because they're like regeneration monsters.
They have like given axolotls like colorful cancer cells. Yeah.
Oh, with pigments?
Yeah.
Pigment tracking for cells.
Or like glow in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can see it because they're pretty translucent.
That is crazy.
They've also given them like genes or injected them with like glow in the dark stuff, and then they just glow in the dark. They also have taken glow in the dark cells, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, put it onto like nubs, and they grew a glow in the dark limb.
That's the coolest thing. They should have put axolotl DNA into the Indominus Rex in Jurassic World instead of like tree frog or whatever the heck they use.
So it's glowing, and you can definitely not be snuck up on.
You definitely not catch fish anymore.
So here's a weird thing. A wounded limb can sometimes grow a second limb. So instead of just regenerating the wound, it'll grow 2. So you'll have 2 on one side.
That sounds bad.
That sounds bad. But it makes them like popular as pets because it's like this has 2 legs on one side. This is silly.
Makes them popular in the axolotl community.
Yeah.
Like, look, I've got
Culturally,
5
it's a good thing.
You've been blessed with a 5th leg.
So, speaking of scientists being Sid Phillips, they have successfully transplanted an axolotl head onto the back of a second axolotl. So you got a second head on your back. And it survived for like a few months.
That's horrific.
I wouldn't want to be the one on the back.
It's like Cat Dog. Did you ever see that show?
I definitely, yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that.
No?
No, because it doesn't have, I don't think it had any control over anything. It's just all along for the ride. It's more like Voldemort.
Oh, I see. Except without the evil plans.
Yeah, somebody had evil plans.
In the turban.
All right, so the way they do this...
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
What do they... Do they just stick it on the axolotl for 3 weeks?
I don't know.
Hold it there and then eventually
I
just
imagine that they have to connect the spine somehow. I don't know. It's weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
And it died eventually.
Most things that get head transplants do.
Yeah. So the reason they're able to do this is with a certain cell called, let's see, it's like a stem cell. It's called a pluripotent cell.
Yeah, you have multipotent and you have pluripotent. You have, I think, omnipotent?
Sure.
Omnipotent cells?
Pluripotent cells can turn into any germ cell. Mm-hmm. And a germ cell is the stuff that grows your stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, your skin, your bones, your muscles, your organs, all your tissues.
You have them in your bone marrow and also when you are an embryo.
Yes. And in your umbilical cord and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. You can donate your umbilical cord juice. It's like a really good thing for science.
Yeah, because of stem cell research.
Right. So yeah, conceivably it could, and a pluripotent cell could, with the right programming, become an eyeball cell, or it could become a skin cell,
right.
Or it could become a neuron, or it could become, anything else.
So what's special about these guys is when they have a wound or a lost limb, around the wound, the cells, like the skin cells and the muscle scales and the skeleton scales,
and the skulls,
all of those cells turn into these pluripotent cells.
What?
Yeah.
They're just regular cells, and they're like, now we can do anything.
So those cells are called differentiated cells, and then stem cells and pluripotent cells are undifferentiated cells.
Okay.
Meaning, like, we ain't different, we ain't specific, we ain't want to use skin cells. We're something undifferentiated.
We don't want to mess with labels.
Yeah, we're not into labels. So these skin cells are like, I don't want to be a label. I don't want to be a skin cell anymore. I'm going to be this stem cell, and then grow whatever is needed. So instead of like a human, when we get a burn or a limb chopped off, if you can, it just covers in a layer of skin, protects that area. It closes off the wound. Mm-hmm. These guys, they don't have that. They don't scar at all. There's no scarring. It's just regrowth. Oh, and the other thing that's super cancer resistant, there's 2 other things. One of them is an elephant. And one of them, yeah. One of them is a naked mole rat.
Ah, so I didn't have to remind you.
Yeah, I remembered.
Okay. An elephant?
Yeah.
You could, irradiate an elephant, should you be some sort of monster, and it would not conceivably get cancer?
It's resistant. I don't know if it's impossible for them to get cancer.
It could eat, all the Splenda and still not get cancer?
There's a lot of evidence suggesting that you can, too.
I was trying to think of anything else, like hot dogs? I don't know.
Oreo cookies.
Do they?
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Well, they've said that they are carcinogens.
All right, since we're getting pretty close to the end mark or over the end mark, I'll just end with the specifics of the cancer research that they're doing. The University of Nottingham has researchers. We'll start there. And according to this new Atlas.com article I read, so cancer is often caused by having the cell's tumor suppressor genes turned off. Because cells divide and turn into things based on the programming in their genes, and things can be turned off or on based on proteins binding to them. So if the gene is on, then the cell will only reproduce to a certain limit. However, it needs to, like, I don't know, heal or grow whatever. But if it's off, it'll reproduce out of control and become a tumor. And there are these proteins called epigenetic marks, which bind to the DNA and cause that suppressor gene to be turned off, which they think is one of the main causes for cancer. And so what they did was they took axolotl oocytes, which are eggs that have not yet gone through ovulation. So I guess they take them out of the axolotl. And they have molecules that modify the epigenetic marks so that to override them and turn the switch back on. And it worked. After 60 days, there was no more cancerous growth in the subjects for this experiment.
So he fixed it.
I don't know if they use it on people, but I think they used it on like a cancerous thing that they had, a cancerous mass that they had, and then it stopped growing when they introduced the extract from these oocytes.
So let's ship it.
The extract from the oocytes has molecules in it that modify these proteins. The proteins are bad. They bind to DNA, which cause your tumor suppressor gene to be turned off.
Right.
So the oocyte extract molecules turn it back on.
Nice.
So hopefully this is the start of a wonderful, not so symbiotic relationship, one-sided relationship between us and the axolotl.
Here's what I'm proposing, axolotls. You'll all get a home right in like a super nice tank in everyone's house. Everyone gets an axolotl. Axolotl gets as much food as it wants. You know,
we just rip your eggs out of
healthy
your body.
living. I think no, they lay them, and then
it's pre-ovulation.
Oh,
ovulation means it drops into the fallopian tube, so that means that like you have to take it out of the axolotl. So you do have to kind of.
Hopefully, there's a way to do that that's not terrible for the axolotl. Just like squeeze its belly,
tickle it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. On that wonderful note, I think it's about time we wrap this up. So the axolotl's pretty sweet, just like life, death, and taxonomy.
Death ain't sweet.
I think that snake just bit me.
Geez, well, did you at least see the snake?
Well, I saw it slither away. I can only say for sure that there was some red, some black, and some yellow.
Well, that could either be Micrurus fulvius, the deadly coral snake, or Lampropelatus triangulum, the harmless milk snake.
Yeah, sounds great. Hey, is it getting hot and cold at the same time out here?
Nope. I feel fine, but thanks for asking. If only there was a podcast where two knowledgeable gentlemen could teach us the difference between these two common North American serpents.
I think I'm gonna lie down.
Oh, that's right. You can listen to Life, Death, and Taxonomy to get the facts you need when you need them. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcast app you use for your 30 minutes of interesting animal info. Isn't that right, Carlos? Carlos? Well, my guess is that this is a classic case of deadly coral snake venom. Well, I radio in a chopper. You be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review while you're at it.